Yeah.
So, Mahesh, I heard one of your talk in on YouTube. I
Hmm.
don't remember the talk name. It's about being a CTO or how to become a CTO.
Oh yeah.
And there you talked about cognitive biases.
Okay.
So I would like to hear more on it. What do you mean by cognitive biases and how it can help or hinder you in your day-to-day job?
Sure. I think it's more like a I'm not a psychology major or anything for that matter, right? But I think one of the things that I've actually noticed in a lot of the stuff that we actually work is that we bring a strong bias in everything that we actually do, rightly or wrongly, right?
Mm,
There are a number of cognitive biases. I think they'll probably, from memory, I'll try and recall some of the ones that I have encountered a lot. The first one is, of course, confirmation bias, right? I mean, like what people do is they start with a preconceived notion,
mm,
and any result that they actually see, it basically confirms whatever they held to as being true or or false or whatever it is. Basically, they're looking at this. I knew this was going to happen because of this, right? And you can look at things like politics itself, right? And you go like, it really doesn't matter whether you're a very strong Trump supporter or not. But all the Trump supporters will go give the same examples that non-Trump supporters will say to say, look, look what he's done, and this is exactly why we actually elected him as leader, right? And
ah,
then people who don't support Trump will say, like, cite the same examples and say, like, this is exactly why we shouldn't have elected Trump, or we should have voted for. And so you kind of like look at it and go like, what has actually basically changed? Nothing's actually changed. Your mind is basically um, uh, you know it's for you, it's a confirmation of your own beliefs when some
mm,
incident happens. And
true.
you can actually see this carry on throughout all the things that we actually do, right? I mean, like, if you can go look at examples, um, and for example, technology choices within companies. And if you think that I have gone been a lot of people and who kind of like have a very strong dislike for Microsoft. There could be
Mm,
no reason why they don't like it, right? And then there may be an outage on Azure, and they'll say, look, this is exactly why you've said you shouldn't go with the Microsoft cloud, right?
mm,
Now, sure, outages happen in other clouds as well, but in their minds, they're kind of like stuck on the notion that this is why we shouldn't have chosen Microsoft.
true.
And the same thing happens. You go look at Facebook or Google, and then they say, look, like, why we shouldn't have chosen it because of privacy issues or something. That the opposite happens as well. You'll see something like Apple coming up with the same idea that Microsoft did a few years ago. The same people
Mm,
who criticized Microsoft for those ideas will go and say, like, what a wonderful idea, right? Look, they've taken
true.
off the earphone jack off on a phone, and this is such a wonderful idea. They'll say that because it came from Apple, and because they're a big supporter or fan of Apple, they will
Right.
think that it's a wonderful thing, right? And I see this happening all the time in choices people make within when they're choosing products. They a lot of people come from yeah, let's say I actually work for company A, and let's say we're looking at the marketing technology stack, right? So if you looked at Martech stack, and they've used Adobe in the past, right? And they come out to a new company, and they may be using something else, and they feel that, look, this has to change because that's the only thing that's actually worked in the past. This company, is you've got all these flaws, and we've got to change into this new stack that I'm familiar with. And
Mm,
once it's there, and it'll actually fix all the problems. What we end up doing is we exchange one set of problems for another.
right.
There's a whole implementation cost, a whole bunch of things that need to change. The cost of change is actually very high because it's not just the technology that we're changing. We've got to change people and process and everything else. And so a lot of people don't take a lot of these things into effect, into
Mm,
consideration. And so confirmation, their own biases kind of like lead to problems, right? We also have other kinds of biases. Stereotyping is another bias that I've come across, right? I mean, and people have had like very poor experiences with, and kind of like the stereotyping kind of like kind of like crossover multiple things. Like what I said about earlier is
right.
about applies in the same thing where you in the past, you think that enterprise architects didn't add any value in the previous
Mm,
company that you used to work with. They've always been blockers. And so when you move to the new company, they may have a completely different way they work. And you think, no, 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 let's not involve them in any of the discussions that we have because they've always been blockers in the past. Or let's not get the security people involved in this conversation until the very end because um, they're always saying no to things and they're always asking these questions. And you kind of like have these stereotypes of all these people, and this is how they work. And you kind of like carry on this bias throughout.
Right, right.
Um, I've had a lot of experience with this post-purchase rationalization,
Hmm.
which is another one of those biases,
True,
where
true.
people have made this really huge investment in the technology, right?
Yep.
And even when it is not delivering the goods, they kind of like start putting more and more investment into it, saying, "Well, look, we spent a lot of money; it's got to be right." And
Yeah, let's do
they
more.
don't cut their losses and move on, kind of thing.
True,
So there are
true.
lots of biases. I think we can actually keep talking about biases,
True,
for
true.
the entire
But I
show.
think it's very important to have that self-awareness of your own
Yeah,
cognitive biases and
yeah.
make sure you keep it in check. Otherwise, yeah, you're right, you'll make more mistakes.
I think that is the key message, right? That you actually mentioned is that no matter how much you try, you are going to have bias in your mind, and
Yeah,
sometimes bias are a good thing as well, right? I
right.
think it'll be yeah, for you to be aware of these biases and be objective of some of those decisions. I think that's what you need to be, careful with. I think that is the key message. I would say, if all those people listening, it's like having a bias is not necessarily a bad thing, but
Right.
being aware of it is really important.
True, true, true. Yeah. So let's shift gear a little bit. I know you're CTO, you must be having a lot of products under you.